Testing. 1, 2, Gig Stories podcast. Christopher, are you there?
I am. You went right into the microphone there, mate. Your mic technique has gone right out the window.
Oh, mate, I'm so excited that we're back. I didn't even know how to turn the computer on.
No. Well, I've had the computer on, but I've not been on Zoom, and obviously we were just about to go on, and then it's like you must update. It's like, oh God, I've needed to update for many years. Especially my haircut and my wardrobe.
Well, listener, you'll be pleased to know he's got his jumper on.
Oh God, yeah. Winter draws on.
And I mean, you haven't changed. You haven't changed.
Well, I have. I've had a shower and everything.
Only you can prove that one at the moment.
No, that's true. That's true.
It's been a while, listener, and we appreciate your patience. Chris and I have both been off, really busy, lots going on in our lives, personally and professionally, as we know is the case for everyone. But I mean, what's happened, Chris? Since we've last been on, I've got even more grey hairs, a dog, and a tattoo. So, you know.
Oh, you got a tattoo. I knew you were looking for an artist. Did you find an artist, or did you find somebody down the back street who was doing it with a heated up needle and some biros?
B, my 10-year-old just said, "I'll do a few, Dad." So, you know, I can't go wrong. But that's for another podcast.
Oh, let me see it. Where is it? Oh, it's not on there, is it?
This is absolutely not for this podcast. I'll definitely show you the one that I have at Christmas, which will be on my forearm, which is going to be a Glastonbury themed one. But this is just a nonsensical word that only means, and I won't talk about it here. It just means something to me. But
okay,
it was quite interesting. And away from this podcast, I'll talk about the psychology and the emotions that I felt as it finished.
Because I thought you were going to get a dolphin on your ankle. I thought or maybe live.
Is that love, flipper?
Is it live, love, laugh across your lower back?
Funny you should say that. I've got love, live, laugh, prosecco. I'll cross.
Excellent. You don't have to be mad to work here. Yeah.
That is brilliant. So what have you been up to, Mr. Payne?
I've been doing lots of photography. I've just finished a week working on Manchester Animation Festival, which is always a highlight of the year. Love it. It's great because I know nothing. Well, obviously I know cartoons and I know animated films and all that kind of stuff, but the levels and the artistry that's going into a lot of the work that's been created now is wonderful, and a lot of it is coming out of Manchester and the Manchester area. So the likes of McKinnon and Saunders, who you may not know the name, but they did the animation for Corpse Bride, for Bob the Builder's one that they've done for years and years and years. They did Fantastic Mr. Fox, so loads of stuff with them, and I love the fact that the people who go to this festival, there's a lot of animation students there, and they're just real geeks, but I mean that in a really positive way. I love the fact that they are just dedicated to what they like. I mean, we're geeks, obviously. We're geeks to do this podcast, and I love that level of
geekery.
Geekery, yeah. Just they love what they do, and they live, breathe this stuff, and everyone's sketching while they're just sitting having a coffee, and it was similar. I had another job the previous month, which was the Comic Art Festival in the Lakes, and again, that's graphic novels and it's comic books. Exactly the same vibe. All these people who just live and breathe this stuff, and yeah, I love it. I love a geek.
That's amazing. I love it. Sounds good. It sounds good.
I've been doing bits of music, not a massive amount. I've only been to one gig, as in a kind of popular music combo. But I've been doing quite a bit of classical music, and I saw one gig which went into my top 10 gigs of all time, which came straight from left field, and it wasn't left field.
It wasn't left field, listener.
No, it wasn't left field, but it came from left field. Yeah,
which if it was left field, it'd probably go straight into your top 5, I reckon.
Probably, yeah.
Well, listener, let me just introduce what we're doing. This is just going to be a very short episode. The only special guest in this episode is Chris, and the other guest being me. We just wanted to touch base, say hello, and essentially let you know that we have started work on the next series. So we are starting to interview brand new guests, and we will be back with our regular looking podcast with some few new ideas. So we're excited to get back to it. So we haven't gone away. Well, we have, but we're back. And we just thought we would have a catch up with each other and with you, the listener, because we'd love to have more involvement from you going forward. We really want to get our social media page going so that it can become a bit more of a community, and that we can have your input, and we'll talk more about that. But this is the Gig Stories podcast. It's about live music, and since we've last been with you, we've had all kinds. We've had the festival season, and we've had our own personal gigs. I had a personal highlight last week that we'll talk about with my son. And Chris, who I'm sure you're intrigued to know, has been to a gig that's gone straight into his top 10. So before we start there, I just want to acknowledge that as we are recording this, the very sad news about the passing of Wilko Johnson has just come through. Legend, I would say genius. That word does get thrown around, but I think his back catalogue and the influence of Dr. Feelgood on not just British music, but I think sort of, that garage punk sound, new wave worldwide. So it's really sad. It's really sad. And Chris, before we started recording this, I played to Chris Milk and Alcohol. It's surely that's one of those songs that just everyone in Britain knows. And if you're listening, you're thinking, hang on, who's Dr. Feelgood and who is this Wilko Johnson? Just search out Dr. Feelgood on your music app, whatever you use, and just play Milk and Alcohol. And you'd be like, oh yeah, of course, it's that song. So yeah, sad to hear that news. Chris, did you ever by chance happen to see Dr. Feelgood live?
I didn't know. No. I didn't. No, I mean, I enjoyed the music, but was never massively into them. But you don't have to be a massive fan to know the influence and the impact that they've had on the UK and world music scene. So yeah, sad news.
I'm sort of kicking myself. I wish I'd made more of an effort to see Dr. Feelgood live, because there was a group of those bands, from back then, and I've seen quite a few of them, including the Stranglers, and I wish I'd seen Dr. Feelgood. But he leaves behind one hell of a creative output. So if you're unsure of who they are, get on YouTube or whatever and get searching. You'll see some great live stuff and videos on there. So, right, let's jump into it, Chris. Live musical highlights from yourself, please. Let's just go straight into. You said you've been to a gig that has gone in straight into your top 10 gigs of all time.
Yeah, I think so.
You think so? Are you backing out? Are you chickening out with that now?
No. I think. I mean, obviously, it's difficult it's difficult to get into that top 10. They're coveted spots.
Which hilariously, listener, if I was any kind of journalist, I'd push Chris and say, "What is that top 10?" Oh, we'd be here for hours. We'd be here for days. He doesn't know what his top 10 gigs are. Nor do I. But that's the fun, isn't it? That's the fun. It's a theoretical top 10, but it's interesting. So come on, tell us about it.
Well, I was working. I was booked to photograph this gig, and it was at the Stoller Hall, which is just next to Chet's Music School, just opposite Victoria Station in Manchester.
Yeah.
And it was the Soweto Gospel Choir, and I'd kind of heard of them, and I thought, oh yeah, a lovely South African gospel choir. That'll be good for the soul. Oh my God, they were incredible. Just yeah, dancing, and I don't know, it just took me completely by surprise how much I absolutely adored it. So if you got just have a look on YouTube and find Soweto Gospel Choir, because they're just joyful. And you know, by the end of it, I was wiping tears away from my face, because it was so gorgeous. They did, and I know it's a bit of a hackneyed cover version to do, ever since
Wonderwall.
Jeff Buckley did it, but they did a version of Hallelujah.
Oh, amazing.
And I thought, oh God, here we go, because everyone does it.
Yeah.
But more, it was amazing. They did Amazing Grace as well, which it was just stunning. And you know, on paper, you look at the set list and think God, it's a bit of a cliched set list, but they approached these versions with such joy that it was impossible not to get swept along. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. So yeah, in the top 10, it's in the top 10.
That is incredible. It's hard to pinpoint why, and I've seen similar gospel choirs, and it's the sound, and an African voice brings different sounds. Now, as someone who grew up in choirs, I mean, you know, Mr. Welshman here, I've heard a lot of choirs, and my sister still sings in choir. So I have an ear for a choir, but they just sound so different. Their harmonies and parts just sound like nothing else. And the actual tones and sounds they make, it's just brilliant. And yes, you're not watching Treorchy Male Voice Choir for their choreography.
No.
but you watch the Soweto Gospel Choir, and you're getting smiles, movement, and real joy in voices, along with the actual, you know, singing. I can imagine that's gone into your top 10.
Well, I've only just realised that they featured on the Peter Gabriel song "Down to Earth," the one that was written for Wall-E, and nominated for an Oscar for Best Original Song. And oh yeah, they were just knockout. So yeah, have a look for Soweto Gospel Choir. There's a couple of other ones just before we get to you.
Let me just say, before you finish there, what I love about those instances, it's when it's unexpected. And
what was the one that Pete Paphides was telling us about in a fairly recent episode, where he was at Glastonbury and he went down to see, was it the I'm going to kick myself now. I'll find out. I'll find which one it was. But he went down and couldn't believe more people weren't there.
Yeah,
and absolutely adored it. Let me just have a quick search. But
it's those moments, the unexpected ones that you just like, oh my gosh, that was incredible, and you often don't want it to end.
Well. It's Africa Express.
Yes, okay, brilliant.
That's the one. So that's why it popped into my head, and I think he was sideswiped by that one. And yeah, I can totally see. I know it's not the same. It's not, you know, it's not just because they're both from Africa. It's more about the feeling that you get where you find something that you weren't expecting, and you go, "Whoa, that's taking me completely by surprise."
I had it from Sigur Rós, who were a support act when I first saw them, and I was just blown away, and did not know them. I only knew of them. And I was just thinking that was incredible. And then I could have gone home after that, but then I realized I would have missed Radiohead, so I didn't.
Oh, that's a decent lineup, isn't it?
That's not bad.
That's not bad, not bad. Shall I just tell you about the other two that
yes, I want to know who else you've been to, who else you've seen.
Well, I went to see the Lemonheads, and
oh my gosh, of course.
yeah, so I've been a Lemonheads fan since It's a Shame About Ray came out, and it was my album. I just played it constantly. And it was quite easy to play over and over again because it's only about 15 minutes long anyway.
Yes.
But I absolutely loved that album. But I'd never got a chance to see them play it live, or even play live.
No,
I'd seen Evan Dando. He did a gig in Glasgow in about 97, 98. And it was in a tiny venue, a great venue actually, just on Sauchiehall Street, called Nice and Sleazy's. And it was downstairs in Nice and Sleazy's. So if you stood on your well, maybe not you, but if you stood on your tiptoes, you could touch the ceiling. It was that kind of gig. Sorry, mate.
I'm all right with the cheap short jokes. It's okay.
Yeah. But honestly, the sweat was dripping off the ceiling, and it was, I mean, on paper, quite unpleasant, but it was great. He was just knockout, really good. So when I saw that the Lemonheads were going to play "It's a Shame About Ray" in its entirety, I thought, yes, get in. And it's at the Ritz, which I love. For all its faults, I do love the Ritz. Apart from the lighting in there now, as a photographer, the lighting's awful.
Oh, really?
Just consistently bad.
Is that its fault, the Ritz?
Partly, yes, I think. Lots of red light and blue light, and either of those, just you end up having to either edit in black and white, or it's not conducive to great photos.
It's just not cricket, listeners. It's not cricket.
It's not cricket. But also it was really dark, and also he had long hair and was kind of looking down, so the hair was over his face. So I didn't get many photos that I was happy with. But they played a lot of "It's a Shame About Ray." A
lot,
but they played a lot of it. They didn't play all of it.
What? That was the whole point of it.
Well, yeah. And the previous night, I think, or the night before, two nights previously, they played in Nottingham, and they played something like 36 tunes, and played the whole of the album. But I think this was, they became victim to the curfew. I don't know if they had a club night on that night, because it was a Thursday night. I think it was a Thursday night, so maybe it was a student club night that was happening.
I can't hold this any longer. This tour has been all over the press. Now, the night after, I believe it was the night after you saw them, one of my friends in work, one of our cameramen, he'd gone to see them in Norwich, and he said it was one of the most awful gigs he's ever seen in his life. And like us, he's a regular gig goer, massive Lemonheads fan. His wife is just besotted, just loves him. But he said it was a mess. But specifically, poor Evan Dando was a mess, because we know that he is still battling demons. And I saw that there were quite a few dates on the tour that people were just like, what is going on? And actually, my friend said that it was sad. And he's like, the gig just needed to stop. And someone just needed to take Dando off and help him. Because
I realised that the previous time that the Lemonheads had come, it was the same story, and I think they played Gorilla, and it sounded like they were late coming on stage by about an hour. But anyway, this one, to be fair to them, he was great, and so Alison's Starting to Happen, which is one of my favourites on the album. It was banging. It was really good. And Rick James' style was knockout as well. I know that's not from the album after that, but it was really great.
Was with it. He was
kinda, yeah. I mean, it was an odd one to begin with, because he started it with a solo spot. And it's the first time that as a photographer, I've been told, right, you've got the first 8 songs, no flash. I was like, what? Normally it's first 3, but he played 8. nobody knew when one song had stopped and the next one had. So we were looking across to the show set guys, and they were like, I don't know. So anyway, it didn't really make that much of a difference because the lighting states didn't change, and I didn't get any better photos. And
That,
I think
that all sounds a bit sort of Bob Dylan. What?
Yeah, it was just a bit chaotic. But then it
Right.
was more towards the end. They played a lot of It's a Shame About Ray. They didn't play Mrs. Robinson, and I wasn't that. I know, biggest hit off the album, but I wasn't that disappointed because I prefer their stuff. So they played Bit Part, and they played Turnpike Down, and they played some of the biggies. But yeah, it just kind of fizzled out towards the end, and it finished off with him singing. I can't even remember what it was. It was like something from the American Songbook, some ballad, and then he wandered off, and the lights stayed down. Everyone was just kind of looking around, and I saw at the back of the gig Tony Walsh, one of our previous guests on this pod. I saw him because he's kind of about a foot above everyone else. Yeah, exactly. And he always stands at the back, polite fellow that he is. And just kind of looking at, and just everyone was looking around. And then the roadies came on. They were kind of gesturing to the audience, going, we don't know. And then, people were asking for the set list. And it would have been interesting to see what the bloody set list was. But yeah, and it just stopped, and then the lights went on. There was a few boos, but not that many boos. If it had been a really shocking gig up till then, and it had been chaos and poor performances and lack of commitment or whatever, I think the crowd would have absolutely kicked off and would have been booing. But they didn't.
It sounds like it was a bit of a mess.
It was a bit of a mess, but what I'm saying is, if it had been an appalling gig, the boos would have been ringing out, but it wasn't that much. So, and I didn't actually feel that shortchanged by it. Okay. It was a really odd one, though. It was a really odd one.
And maybe, like with, we always joke about Dylan. Are you getting the good or the bad Dylan?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the case for the Lemonheads, because people
He's the new Dylan. He's the new Dylan. Did you see Good Evan or Bad Evan?
Yeah, I think that, yeah. Well, I hope he's well. I hope he's well, and I'm glad you got to see him. I was just going to, listener and friend of the show, Guy Hodgkiss, he went to see Dylan. Last month, and got absolutely on fire. Dylan.
He got great Dylan.
Dylan, and I'm still yet to get great Dylan. Which is,
you will have heard Guy, if you listen to our live episode with Jack Jones, you will have heard Guy talking to us from the crowd about good Dylan, bad Dylan. And so I'm really pleased, because he was at a Dylan concert that we mentioned in that interview with Jack.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're really pleased for Guy that he got good Dylan.
He got good Dylan.
Just before we move on to you, I'm just going to tell you about one other gig that I photographed for work, which was the amazing Manchester Collective, this classical music, classical for whatever that means. But they're doing really interesting stuff, 20th century music.
Oh, yes.
And they performed at RNCM this piece called Weather, which had video projections in the background, and it was knockout. It was really good. But the reason I'm mentioning that is because you can watch it on their website. If you just go to manchestercollective.co.uk/weather, I really recommend checking that video out, because it's brilliant. It's like unscrewing the top of your head, putting ice cold water in it, sugaring it around, and then putting the top of your head back on. That's what it felt like. It was great.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, the way you described it, that sounds utterly horrific.
If you want to wake up musically, that's the way to do it, is to watch Weather by Michael Gordon, performed by Manchester Collective. They've just got NPO funding from the Arts Council, so National Portfolio Organisation, which means that they're going to be funded for the next 3 years, which is fantastic news.
Brilliant.
At a time when loads of amazing organizations are having their funding cut. Shout out to Oldham Coliseum, which is an absolute travesty. Anyway, don't get me started. But Manchester Collective, great news about them, and it's the first time they've had funding of this sort, so it means that for the next 3 years you can enjoy, and honestly you will love, go and see them live. They're incredible. So anyway, that's me.
Let's do it.
What about you?
Well,
go on.
I'll get on to me in a second, but here's a random thought that's coming from your last few sentences. Obviously, we can be very Manchester centric because that's just where Chris and I live, and that's where most of our music experiences are, this Welshman and Scotsman. But wherever you are, listener, please do what you can to get involved with your local venues. Because in Manchester, for example, we have a great place called the Night and Day Cafe, which is in danger of being closed, which is a great music venue. Please look out in your area, support them by going to gigs, but also if you hear any kind of crap from your council saying, noise pollution, essentially because of gentrification and just money, you do what you can to keep those venues open. I think that's so important.
I would also say, if for any reason you're thinking about buying a property in the middle of town, a town which has a lot of its character from its energetic and vibrant nightlife, that's the reason you kind of want to live there. If for any reason you buy a property and then complain about the freaking noise, then you need to go in the bin. Okay, that's it. And that's what's happened here. That is what's happened here, and it's happened before with Night and Day as well. And the northern quarter of Manchester is a vibrant place. A lot of the roads have been closed and made pedestrian now, so it's a really buzzing place.
We just need these small venues because we're just going to be bombarded by massive venues, and as we all know, ticket pricing is just a joke. So we need both, and I've had 3 gigs in the past month or so, 2 of them at a small venue, the Basement in Yes, and 1 of them at Manchester Arena. And the 2 in Yes were just as important and vital as the one in the Arena. So really, get out there. So we only have a few minutes left. So I've been trying to get to more local venues and smaller artists. And I've noticed that a lot of these artists have just been releasing tickets for around the £10 mark, and that includes £7 and £15. And I've just bought tickets where I can. In fact, I've got 1 ticket for Gaz Whelan in Tilsley, which is very small and specific, week Thursday. I can't go because I'm doing a Christmas light switch on. So if anyone wants a free ticket to see Gaz Whelan, let me know. Just get me on socials and you can have it. But I've been to see Apres, who I've mentioned before, and I went to see Joey Valence and Bray, who are essentially a younger version of the Beastie Boys, both in Yes Basement, tiny room, and brilliant gigs, great atmosphere. I danced as though, there was no tomorrow. What a surprise. It was just so much fun. I just loved it. And I've got a couple coming up, I mentioned Gaz. I'm going to go and see him elsewhere. And listener, it's very possible that our friend here, Mr. Christopher Payne, will be playing saxophone with Gaz Whelan. I'm not going to put him on the spot, but if it happens, just know I will be recording it. Okay. And we will.
Oh my God, you've just absolutely put me on the spot. You absolutely.
I know. I said I'm not putting you on the spot, because I just said if it happens, and if it happens, brilliant. And if it doesn't happen, well, there's always a next time.
You're a piece of work, you are. Quickly, tell me about.
So
tell me about the Arena.
So the Arena, okay, and this leads me on to one of the things I want to close the podcast with. We were really lucky enough to be able to get 2 tickets to Kendrick Lamarr at the Arena. Me and George my 14-year-old, who is obsessed. Now, listener, you will probably have gathered that my kids have been very fortunate, very lucky. They have literally grown up at Glastonbury Festival, going to Kendall Calling, going to music festivals, going to gigs. And by the way, Chris, my daughter, 3 times now in the past month, has messaged me and said, Dad, Dayglow are at the Ritz. Shall I get us 2 tickets for next March? And I've just gone, yes, please. Just small bands, artists that I'm vaguely aware of, and she's getting the tickets. Obviously, I pay for my own ticket because she's got a part-time job. She's paying for a ticket, and she's inviting me. And she just yesterday phoned me and went, Dad, Inhaler, or Bono's son, they've just announced they're playing, where are they playing? The Ritz, I think, next year. Should I get tickets? And I tell you what, I'm holding back tears going, yes, my kids are buying tickets. Anyway, we go to the arena last week, and George is shaking with excitement, right? And I will check with him on whether I can share the audio to a video I have, right? And it's during a song called Family Ties, which is his absolute favorite, right? And I nearly jumped out of my skin. And if you listen around the 11-second mark, he loses his mind. He's shouting every lyric, which I can't understand. And the joy, I mean, it sounds like he's just being seriously aggressive. The joy in his face was just incredible. Now, I'm going to say this now, right? I've always loved rap, hip hop, grime, and whatever you want to call it. Kendrick Lamarr is one of the most important and creative musical geniuses of my lifetime. The guy is incredible. Now, from a live point of view, I experienced not a first, but a best. I've been in a lot of audiences and heard a lot of crowds. Apart from when Guy Garvey is asking you all to sing along, or Chris Martin, or even on smaller gigs, they're sing along a chorus or a specific line. The arena at Kendrick Lamar last week was actually deafening, not because of just the applause and the reception, but the constant singing or rapping, whatever you want to say, of the lyrics. I have never heard anything like it. It was like all 20,000 people in there knew every word, and they were belting it out, every one of them, all at the same time, no holds barred or holding back. I was there going, this is mental. Was
it not quite annoying?
No, because it was so intense, because the music was loud. For the arena, It was amazing. The sound was unreal, and the bass was ridiculous.
Well, I think it would have got on my nerves.
Oh no, I couldn't stop smiling, Chris.
Actually, we've paid to hear Kendrick Lamar, and actually, could you sit down because I can't see?
I could still hear. Let me tell you, I could still hear Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, right, okay.
I'm watching mosh pits that rival Machine Head at Donington in 1995. I kid you not.
Wow.
It was crazy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am experiencing something absolutely outrageous. And as you can hear, I'm very excited about it. It was just crazy.
Oh, wicked.
What a wonderful experience.
Nice one.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, and this leads me to something. Chris spoke about the Soweto Gospel Choir. I spoke about Kendrick Lamar. All right, Kendrick Lamar wasn't unusual for me. The Soweto Gospel Choir perhaps wasn't unusual for Chris, but for each other, it might be unusual. So here's our thing. I am going to choose a gig that I'm going to take Chris to that I think he would not have chosen himself, and that may be out of his seemingly comfort zone. And he is going to do the same for me. Now, listener, I've just put Chris on the spot here. Okay, I wanted it to be a surprise, because also I want you, the listener, to do it. I want you to look at your venues, look at your local venues, no matter what size they are. Look at artists come in and look at something, whether it's for yourself or you do it with your mate. Go to something that you wouldn't normally. And Chris and I are going to do that. And you're going to have to listen to our future episodes to find out who it is, where we're going, who we're seeing, and we are all going to report back. Chris and I are going to report back on here, and listener, you're going to report back to us on social media with your pictures, videos, and your stories.
I love it. I love it.
So I am really excited about that, and I hope that everyone gives it a go, and we all see a gig that we wouldn't normally choose.
Oh, I'm going to get planning. This is going to be fun.
I surprised you with that one, because there's no time constraint, so we can just get looking, and I've already been looking, and you know, I want it to be a great night, and hoping that we'll have maybe one of those unexpected. Ooh, what a night of music! What a night of music! Anyway, tell us about what's coming up right now, Chris.
Yeah, so this is the third of our compilation episodes. So we've got 9 guests here. Why not 10, you ask?
Why not 10?
Because one of the 10 in episodes 21 to 30 was a compilation episode.
What a guest! What a guest!
We have 9, but the absolute crackers. This run of guests, it's great because we go through folk music, jazz, funk. We've got a poet in there. We've got pop. We've got indie. Anyway, I'll tell you. We've got Eddi Reader, who, oh bless it, that's my dog. Thank you, Scouty. We've got Eddi Reader who sings us a song.
Yes,
which is delightful. Then Ren Harvieu, oh yes, knockout. Manda Rin, we talk about we talk about somebody she met at a festival, and it's very funny. The mighty Ralph Rolle. So we chatted to him. It was one of our few in-person interviews, and what a diamond of a man.
Incredible.
Anna Doble, radio producer and just all-round good egg.
Absolutely.
She was up next. Howard Murray, my father-in-law, talking about jazz. God rest his soul. He died not long after this episode was recorded and broadcast. So rest in peace, my mate. Tony Walsh was another in-person. We did it as part of Tim Burgess's Vinyl Adventures in Manchester. We recorded that at the wonderful Deaf Institute. Again, that's a venue that you need to support.
Definitely.
Then we had Rhodri Marsden, just an absolute encyclopedic knowledge of music, keyboardist in Scritti Politti, and the King of Christmas.
He really is. He's the best thing about Christmas Eve.
Yeah. Sorry, my dog's going mad. I think we might have the postie at the door. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, we have James Walsh, singer with Star Sailor and just the most gentle soul. And yeah, he's great. Absolutely. So we've got all of those coming up. We've picked some of our highlights.
Guests.
A plethora, a cornucopia.
Oh.
So we've chosen. Well, I've chosen some of my favorite bits from those 9 episodes, and they're coming up right now.
My first live performances was when I was 8 in knitting class. Mrs. McDonald's knitting class, and every week we'd have an after-school knitting class, and we'd make little purses. And there was one boy, Gerard, he was in there, and the rest of us were all women. And the girls were very much the popular girls. They were all in the knitting class, and I was in it basically because I kind of wanted to be part of their team, but at the same time, I knew I couldn't be part of their team. I wasn't pretty enough, or I was too skinny. My socks fell down all the time. I had egg on my tie. I didn't brush my teeth right. I was a bit of a mess. I thought I was a bit of a mess. and I couldn't see anything. My eyesight had deteriorated, and I didn't tell anybody for about 3 years. So I was just banging into lampposts and walls, and I just Miss McDonald had her favorites, and she had the big bouffant hairdo, the big piled high black hair, and to ease her boredom, she would ask the girls to do a turn, and one of them, Jacqueline, would get up and she would do a country dance. Another one would get up and do a magic trick, and then Belinda, who was the most beautiful of all and the princess of the classroom, eyelashes that stopped her sleeping because she couldn't close her eyes. Just the most beautiful girl, had all the great gear. She's only 8 or 9, and I'm immediately, all the boys loved her, and all the girls wanted to be her, and I just wasn't in that group. And I put my hand up. I got my dad. I realized that I could do this thing that I used to do while cleaning my mum's house or looking after my 6 siblings and other people's babies in the street. I used to sing them to them and lullaby them, and I sung in the Tenement Close, which is the best reverb ever. I've been looking for it ever since. In every studio I ever go to, I want Tenement Close reverb. And I said to Miss McDonald, I said to my dad first, when he came home from work, he was covered in black oil. And I said, Daddy, would you write me out the words to Love Me Tender? Great Elvis fans, my mum and dad. So he said, would you want them, Farhead? And I said, I just want to know them. And I kept it secret. And he wrote out, and there's bloody 6 verses to that song. Love me true, love me long, love me always, whatever it is. Millions of verses. And I learned them. And then that Thursday at the knitting class, Mrs. McDonald said, who wants to sing a song? And I was like, hand up. And of course, everybody was shocked. They were like, you? What? And of course, I got up and I shut my eyes and put my hands behind my head. I'll never forget the feeling. It's the same me that's inside me. So I had my hands and my eyes were shut, and my tears were streaming down my face. But I was determined, and because I knew I had this thing that I could do. It was like Kes, and I started singing. Love me tender, love me long, take me to your heart, for it's there that I belong and will never part. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfilled. For my darling, I love you, and I always will. And then I opened my eyes, and they were all like,
yes.
Gobsmacked. And I just ended up, Belinda then asked me back to her house, do you want to come and play with my Barbie dolls? Would you like to come to mine for that? When I was suddenly part of, and it was currency then for me. I just realized that I kind of knew it. I don't know, maybe I think singers do when they're very young. They kind of know that they're just apart from everybody in a way. They're not chasing boyfriends or clothes or toys. They just want to be the singer.
Can I just ask you about that performance then? Because I would have thought if that was your first performance that you would have had, not nerves, but kind of the action of putting your hands behind your head is quite an open action, and you're kind of you're leaving yourself open there, and that seems like a really bold thing to do as an 8-year-old. Can you remember what the decision? Why you made that decision? Because I would have been crossing my arms as protection,
My logic, I think at the time, was I lean against the blackboard, and then if I could feel the blackboard with my hand, I won't fall over. I'll be steady. And that was a way, I think, of just keeping myself steady. There was definitely a reassurance in it. Like, I'm only relaxed. I'm just leaning here nonchalantly.
Yeah.
I'm going to sing this to these people that don't really believe in me and probably don't like me. And I needed to, I'm certainly sure that when a singer is born or when a musician is born, I think more than anything, because I don't think it's just singers that have it. An artist, anybody that's got a sort of drive to see beauty in something. And I saw it in songs. I saw beauty in songs when other people didn't see beauty in songs. You know what I mean? It could be anything. If you Run Rabbit Run, Flanagan and Allen coming through a radio or something, I'd be like mesmerized. Whereas other people are going, get the bloody dishes done, you know.
Me opening up for the Cortinas at the Apollo was not a good idea.
It's not the most obvious fit, is it?
No,
it
wasn't. No, it was a sea of men and young boys that did not want to see a young girl on the stage. It was just like I'd pierced the male energy in the room, and they were all furious.
They're gonna have to watch their language or something.
So I loved it.
Yeah.
I was like, this is a song about periods.
Let me just say this now. I love you. And that is the best thing ever. Best thing ever. More than anyone, I'm all right with a bit of testosterone, and you see a lads band, whatever, that's great. Love it. But that is brilliant. And I don't think I've only ever sort of referred to this on the podcast. The Cortinas themselves, I am sure, are lovely people, but they are.
Oh, yeah, they were lovely.
Were they? Oh, typical.
They were.
But they are one of the bands musically that have just gone over my head over the years.
Yeah.
Shall I cancel Liam for next week then, Alex?
Yeah, cancel. No, he's always seemed lovely, and I've tried, but I just don't get it. But there is no denying when they play live, and I've seen them twice. You know, once at Glastonbury with my kids, and the crowd went absolutely batshit. It was amazing. They absolutely have total control over their own crowds. Brilliant. But the thought of you supporting that is wondrous to me. I'm gonna be thinking about that this evening. That's absolutely brilliant.
Well, I'm just wondering if you can think of bands that were kind of memorable that followed you or you were before.
We played Tea in the Park one year, and we were just after Dog Star, Keanu Reeves' band.
Oh God!
That's quite an
no. Right for you listeners, Chris had written down Dog Star, and he'd not shown us. And he just revealed it.
Well, I was there. I saw that.
You were there?
Yeah, I was there.
At the park.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's when I got my famous photo of me with Keanu Reeves. That's one that I show to people to this day. It's so cool. I'm quite obsessed with getting my photo with famous people.
That I've got something that's vaguely related to that, Manda Rin.
Okay.
You've got Keanu Reeves, and I've got his Bill and Ted partner. So please tell me you love the Bill and Ted films.
I don't even know them that well, which is quite bad.
What? You did the Bill and Ted films?
No.
Oh, come on.
I have seen them, but I'm not as crazy. No.
So it was Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter. And so because I've got the S on the end of my name, Alex Winters, he would sort of send me messages that he would receive from mums and dads of CBeebies, like CBeebies mums and dads.
Aww.
And he's in America, and he's like, what are these messages? Who is this? Who's this fella? And so he'd send these messages to me saying, I think these are for you. And so we got to know each other. And we met in Manchester 2 years ago when a Lost Boys reunion. They got the Lost Boys film, the whole cast reunited. And let me just say, for a cult film, they have only ever, that cast, gotten together or reunited once. And that was 2 years ago in Manchester, England. How bizarre is that? Why did no one think to get them all together? Including, what's his face, Mr. Saxophonist, who I have since, found out played live with Tina Turner and things for years. I just thought he was perhaps an actor dressed in leather just for that film. But anyway, I digress. So I've got a picture with Alex Winter, and you've got a picture with Keanu Reeves.
Well, can you remember much about Dog Star? Because I don't think they were that bad, but I felt like the crowd were they not. I can't remember.
They were not good.
I don't remember them either.
I saw them the same summer in Glastonbury.
Yeah, I just remember the crowd were not the most forgiving. I remember basically everyone calling them dog shit, and it wasn't. I don't think that was fair. I didn't do that. But
It's a tough crowd, tea in the park, though, isn't it?
tea in the park is, yeah. I mean, if they love you, they will absolutely adore you. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once again, he was another really nice guy, though.
Honestly, I can't think of any other Hollywood star I would rather meet than Keanu Reeves. I get the impression he's an absolute sweetheart and a talented musician and all that. I just think that the crowd, only because he was a Hollywood star, gave him a rough time. But I can't remember what the band was like.
So did you have time to chat to him then?
No, it was apart from getting my photo, nah, not really. Because we were going on straight after them, I didn't really get a lot of time. But I think he got a different toilet, which I was really envious of. They got there was a nice cubicle all made up, like it looked kind
just
of
for
wooden.
Dogstar.
Yeah.
That's so funny. The Manic Street Preachers got absolutely hammered for that one year, didn't they? By
Really?
Billy Bragg. Yeah, by Billy Bragg, which is funny. And
he just dug a hole and that was it. Keeping it real, Billy.
Exactly. So let's get into this quick fire round.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
That's the longest segue into a quick fire round ever. The irony is not lost.
I had to ask.
Okay, so then here we go. Just some quick answers on these ones.
Okay.
And we always say this. Who is your favorite artist or musician to see live?
Blur.
Oh, Blur.
Their last gig I saw was one of the best I've ever seen. So yeah, Blur.
I wish they would get back together because I've never seen them live.
What?
Really?
No, never seen them live. I don't know if I drank too much of the. No, I drank too much of the Oasis Kool-Aid in 94 to 97 or 96, and then missed the boat with Blur. And now I would probably rather go and see Blur.
Oh my gosh, those tours were incredible.
I've seen Damon a few times, but what's your favourite venue?
Ooh, I've always been a big fan of King Tut's Wawa Hut in Glasgow. I suppose it's because you see all the new exciting stuff, like when Elastica came, and that's probably one of my first ever really good gigs there. And then when you're small, there's a seated bit that you can stand on top of and you can see better. So yeah, I'm a big fan of King Tut's. They've always had a lot of respect for Biss, and yeah, I don't know what it's like at the moment for them, but hopefully it'll all get back up and running again.
So sorry, can I just take you back there? Did you say at that venue, if you're short, what do you, because this is a problem that I face, that there's a place for you to stand on.
Yeah,
or you can
if
get
you're small, you can
on.
suss these things out. There's just a row of like a row or a bench that just in front of the stage. But if you get in early enough, everyone kind of runs to get to these seats because you know that you can stand on them when the band comes on.
Yeah,
so
brilliant.
I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but my old band played King Tut's once, and I remember.
Cool.
Yeah, and we supported Pram.
I used to love Pram on Too Pure.
Yeah, we supported Pram, and but I remember that they had this thing where on the tills, if you bought a pint or bought a drink, they asked you what band you were coming to see, and they would put that in, and then at the end of the night, you would get a tiny percentage of the bar take-ins.
Seriously?
Yeah, I certainly we
sounds
got
kind of
that.
familiar, actually.
Yeah, and I've never heard of it anywhere else, but I just love King Tut's for that. But you're right, they just had every. But I was looking through my old Glasgow uni because I moved to Glasgow in 94 to go to university, and I think it was early 95, I saw Marion headline at King Tut's. But the support was incredible. So they were supported by Pure Essence and Catatonia. And the ticket I think was £4. But to see those three bands in that tiny place, it was that's probably what made me love King Tut's was a combination of those two things. I adore the place, love it. We are going to do our quick fire round.
Yes.
Who's your favorite drummer?
I don't have one. I have a few. Okay. But sitting way at the top of the list is Steve Gadd.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's big influence on approach, style. Harvey Mason, Bernard Purdie. I would have to say, you know, there's in the top 5, those are the top 3. Yeah. You know, Purdie just had a whole thing, an approach that was so just beautiful, you know, as well as Harvey Mason just kind of created his own lane, and Steve Gadd. So when you picked up a record back then, before you even knew to read, you knew who was playing because of their styles.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your favourite work of Steve Gadd? I know he did lots for
50
Simon
Ways to Leave Your Lover. Yeah, I had the pleasure of playing that with Paul Simon. And
did you?
Yeah, it was the highlight of my life.
Oh,
to be able to play that song. Yeah. Steve is a nice guy, by the way.
Yeah. Did you try to add a little bit of yourself to that, or were you just trying to go?
It's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to play 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover like the record, like Steve Gadd, because it deserves that. It doesn't deserve. What I try to tell most musicians when I'm teaching is you're serving something so much higher than yourself. And once you get that, you'll work forever. When you realize that you're serving the music, you know, there will be points where you have to add some of your own salt and pepper and Tabasco sauce, but you're serving a song that needs its attention on every level. And that's just how I think. It has nothing to do with me.
I love that. I've heard you talk about that before, and I love that that way, the way that you treat the song as a kind of holy relic in terms of, you know, the respect that you give it. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, well, it's true, and that's how I, you know, it's when I got the gig with Nile, my goal was to give Tony Thompson all of the respect due to whatever song that he played, and you know, because I came behind Omar Hakim on this gig, which is, you know, those are Titanic shoes to fill. You know, so, but my thing was, I'm going to give it more of a Tony sound as opposed to a Ralph or an Omar sound. Omar led the way in showing me different ins and outs that I still use to this day. But as far as how I approach the Chic sound, I'm back to what Tony did.
One of my favourite live experiences was seeing, I saw Herbie Hancock with Wayne Shorter in Glasgow, and the rhythm section was Stanley Clarke and Omar Hakim. I mean, that's a super group right there. But it was the duels that they did. So you had Stanley Clarke doing this slap bass, and then it was he was playing percussion basically. And then it was just a duel, and then it was together, and then so they were having a battle basically. But it's one of the most thrilling things that I've heard live.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Can you remember a time? I'm sure you've probably had lots of these when you're performing live. You're behind that kit, you're playing, you're at a gig, concert, and you just thought, this is it. It just doesn't get better than this.
Quite a few times. Musicians will tell you that the experience is so overwhelming that it brings you to tears on stage. That's happened to me quite a few times, where you look around and you go, I can't believe this is happening right now. Really, you get overwhelmed, and it just kind of shows the personal dedication to the moment, to the music, to the hours of practice that I'm actually here doing this. You know.
Do you feel that? Do you feel that coming from the fans as well?
Absolutely. There's a point where you lose the space between band and stage.
Really?
It's that energy, and you'll hear this. It's this revolving energy that happens between the audience and the band on stage, and it just starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger and more connected and more connected. You know, with Chic, the connection actually becomes connected when we bring people from the audience onto the stage, and the connection is now complete.
Yeah, I love that.
It's really a great thing, but you feel that energy. Like when I'm doing Let's Dance, there's a performer that you probably know in hip hop called Dougie Fresh.
Oh yeah.
Dougie Fresh is my boy. I've known Dougie for years. We've worked together for a long time.
Yes.
But Dougie is the ultimate crowd pleaser. He can, I mean, if you go to a Dougie Fresh show, guaranteed everybody's going to be going crazy because Dougie just knows how to be an MC, be a call and response. So when I'm doing Let's Dance, I'm basically just doing what Dougie. I've watched him so many times at the Apollo and doing shows. The minute Dougie walks on stage, he has this this air of comfort, not ego, but just like, all right, y'all, I'm you and you're me, and this is about to go down. So everybody say yeah, and it's like a raw, you know. So he does these things, and I just use it in Let's Dance. You know, the same kind of style that he does is just being comfortable to connect the audience and make them feel like they're all part of the show. And it's a New York MC thing, I believe. You know,
I've always been fascinated by that relationship because as a non-musician, but someone who's gone to live gigs, I've said on this podcast time and time again, for me it's a spiritual experience, and I'm glad that you feel that because just last night, so I've been harping on about an English lad called Sam Fender. And he's very much like Bruce Springsteen influenced. He's only in his mid-20s. And I took my 15-year-old daughter to see him last night, and we're both obsessed. Now, this poor lad had his first album go to #1 a year before lockdown. He then had vocal problems, so had to cancel all his gigs. Then had the pandemic. In the meantime, he's gone huge. #1 singles, albums. He's about to release his second album, and he's just starting to play gigs again with his band. And so he's gone from playing, you know, your back garden shed or garage to huge venues. And last night in town here in Manchester, my daughter and I saw him, and I'll be honest, the crowd was incredible. It was like we'd all just been released after 18 months of a pandemic.
From prison.
Exactly,
Right.
from prison. And I've never seen it. There was,
prison.
for every 3,000 people I could see in front of me stood up, there was 3,000 on their shoulders. I mean, it was crazy. I was like, wow, these young kids are getting stronger, aren't they? And the last song, he always finishes with a song called Hypersonic Missiles, which was what sort of put him into the stratosphere. And at the end, it was so crazy, and you could see the band just losing their minds. The crowd was losing their minds, and you saw him break down, and he had to give a quick wave, and he just got off the stage crying. I'm in tears. I'm looking at my 15-year-old daughter who's just shouted out I feel emotional thinking about it now. And it's just, I just love, it's like a drug. It's probably better than any drug you could ever take. And I'm glad that you feel that as well, especially as a drummer up at the back there behind a load of kids. So you feel that as well.
all the time. Sometimes a lot more than others. But when I'm doing my master classes and sees my emotion teaching these kids and watching them absorb your energy, it's an amazing thing. The COVID penitentiary is real. And getting released
Using that as a quote.
is for all of us has been the most amazing thing. And when we came back out the first night of our show, we were doing We Are Family, and I just started bawling, crying uncontrollably.
Yeah.
And I was trying to hide, so I wouldn't distract people. But I lost total control because of the fact that people, you can see them, the people just like I'm so glad to be out of my house, listening to being able to touch someone next to you, that you don't know, just bumping into them, was a great thing. And then to know that I'm here with everybody, it was just, I was done.
You were there with your entire WhatsApp group.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And it was a wonderful thing. Ian, our lighting guy, who is so amazing. I think he saw it because there's a camera right in front of me, and I think he saw me crying. And all of a sudden, the lights slowly started going up, and I'm like, you. Like, because I can't. I got two sticks in my head, so I can't wipe my eyes from crying. But it was just the overall emotion of pleasing the people and seeing them enjoy it, and being on stage with these amazing people and the folks backstage, and it was just like, wow. 18 months just disappeared like that. Yeah. Just like that. It was like 18 months just gone. But that's the power of the arts. And I'm talking about all the arts. Yeah. Not just people who play instruments. I'm talking about painters and poets and dancers, and we're all trying to connect. All of us. Podcasters, really. Really. With your computer instruments and no.
Well, this is our first in-person interview that we've had since the pandemic.
All been over Zoom.
It's so crazy that here's my takeaway. I don't know about you guys, but COVID has basically proven everything that I've been trying to tell people through my classes, through my just overall energy, my entrepreneurial side, is that if you don't get it now, that we're all connected, if you don't get it now, you'll never ever get it.
Can we ask you then, Anna, what was your first gig?
This is where all the cool references take a nosedive, I'm afraid. So
no, nothing about that. It's all good. It's all good.
Despite the wise counsel of my parents and their good taste, my first actual gig that I chose to go to, that I, asked to get tickets for.
This is what we want.
Yeah, here we go. Was Jason Donovan at the Harrogate International Centre. So wow. It's not even a cool venue. It's like a conference centre where they do, kind of, I don't know. Yeah, but like, I don't know, knitting conventions and stuff. Nothing wrong with knitting, but like, it's not normally a place of pop music, or maybe now, or maybe has been since. But so yeah, I'm trying to work out. I was thinking it must have been 91 or 92. I was 12-ish, and my sister came with me, and my little sister, who was I think 7 or 8, and it was. To be fair, Jason put on a cracking show.
Well, I think he probably felt like he needed. To, because his star was on the wane at that point, wasn't it?
It's true.
I mean, he was. It was a downward trajectory at that point.
Kylie had already become Kylie on her own, hadn't she?
And Jason had become Jason Donovan.
Yeah.
And if I'm sure people listening and you have watched some of the Top of the Pops reruns on BBC4 lately.
Oh yes.
So they're in, I think, at the end of 1991. Bryan Adams is still number 1 right now.
For the 10th year.
But when you see the Jason Donovan tracks pop up, even I was clearly a fan in that era, I was like, ooh, don't really remember this one. Because it was Joseph? That kind of it was actually, yeah, it was the Any Dream Will Do, but just before that, kind of maybe spring of 91 summer, that feeling when you can tell that Pete Waterman is really rinsing like the 4th and 5th singles out of the album. That's where we've been in 1991. And the tapes were all neon. Do you remember this? The Stock Aitken and Waterman tapes were bright pink, bright orange, bright lime green.
That's brilliant.
Which is kind of ravey, really, but it was very much
but for kids, it looked like you could lick them. They were like
were you licking your cassettes?
Christopher Payne, ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Payne.
Cassette licker. No, they looked like lollipops. They looked like you could lick them.
Maybe if you lick the 2 holes at the same time, you could record something on the B-side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you still have, by any chance, the ticket stub for that concert?
you asked me this, and I was looking I do have loads of tickets in a shoebox, but they sort of start when I started going to gigs as mid-teen. So if those ticket stubs exist, they're in a shoebox in my parents' loft with a load of old smash hits.
Okay, let's get on to the important thing.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, she's got a shoebox full of ticket stubs. This is what we're here for.
If my mum threw them away, then, it's possible. But I do think that in our loft at home in North Yorkshire, there are some like dark recesses that she hasn't managed to reach, where shoeboxes of tat collected by my sisters and I in the 80s may still be preserved in a kind of cocoon-like state, and I'm hoping to find them one day.
You might want to check that, Anna, because I think your mum's burnt them.
Yeah.
So, Anna, we have Jason, which is marvelous. Jason Donovan. What would you class as? What was then your first cool concert that you felt like you'd found your taste in music? And that's not denying, because Chris and I are both dead against guilty pleasure. There is no guilty pleasure.
I agree. I love pop music, and it's all good. So Jason, when I was about 12 when I saw that gig, so we're sort of fast forwarding probably 4 years to the point where I'm actually able to have my own money to buy tickets and go to a gig on my own, because with Jason, my parents were waiting outside and all that. So it would have been probably Blur at Sheffield Arena in 95.
Oh, get off. That can't be that.
Well, it probably is.
Don't come in here throwing round, yes, my first gig happened to be Arena Blur. That is far too cool.
Saying I'd seen them in some cool little back of a pub would actually be cool. But the point is, I didn't really see them until they were massive. So, because I was 16 and off we went on a coach trip over to Sheffield. And would it have been the Great Escape tour? Yeah, by this point.
I was just going to say, was that did you say 96?
I think 95 the first time I saw them live.
Yeah, it was Great Escape, because I moved into my first ever flat, and that cassette was the soundtrack to us moving in.
Oh, of course, it's What's the Story, Morning Glory, isn't it?
Yeah, it was around
the battle. Yeah.
That tour. Wasn't that the tour where they had? Can you remember the gig?
Burgers.
Burgers. That's what I was just going to say. Yeah, they had giant burgers on the top.
We did.
Because I saw that gig in Cardiff. That tour. Wow, what you lucky thing. That is a brilliant first gig. Tell me what you remember about it and how you felt, and the whole experience.
It was the excitement of having to sort of go on a coach trip as well. So we went across Yorkshire and arrived and got in there and bought the T-shirt, did all those things. And it's the T-shirt that I later wore to Oasis at Nebworth, by the way. I wore a Blur T-shirt to Nebworth.
Get in.
Nice one.
Chris and I are like that. We're both Oasis and Blur.
I think, it was my way of the lady doth protest too much by going to Nebworth, but wearing a Blur T-shirt. But anyway, we can come back to that, because I was very much trying to be like on the Blur side of the divide, but I also didn't want to miss out on a massive moment in culture, and I'm pretty sure that was the right decision. But Blur at Sheffield Arena, I just remember the sound of, how you hear about Beatlemania and what it sounds like to hear a wall of screaming. So we got in, and I was kind of to the left of the stage, higher up, looking down on the mosh pit. Sorry, Dad. And there, and it was just seeing. I'd probably not been in an audience that big before, and the sound of screaming that kind of did drown out half of the first song, which I think was Stereotypes. I think they came on Stereotypes.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. You know what I found recently in terms of little relics of fandom that may or may not be in the loft? I found a review that I'd written for myself. So I got back, had the program T-shirt, and I typed up on my parents' word processor a review that I said to my mum, why did I write that? Was it for the school magazine? Or I said, no, just for yourself. So I wrote myself a review, and I have it, and it's quite cute. It's not bad actually. It's not. It's it's the work of a 16-year-old.
You still have it? Did you say?
Yeah, no, absolutely got it. Yeah.
Would you mind sharing it with the listeners? Would you send a picture to us so that people could read it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's just over there. Shall I see if I've got it?
Oh, we'd love to hear it.
So let me just see if I've still got it in this room. Hold on.
Oh, I think she's got it.
Okay.
I think you've got it.
So what I have here are my two, which I definitely rescued from the loft. It's the Blur program. Remember that?
Wow.
And
What's
then
that?
the Nebworth. That's Nebworth. That's
Oh, you
Oasis
bought the
Nebworth.
Nebworth one.
So I've got those two together. So in here, unless it's moved, but I don't think it has. Yeah, it's so. I mean, look, there's some real evidence of being a massive nerd here.
Right now, you are the most Gig Stories guest ever. you are. You along with Sophie Williams, who is a friend of mine, and she's 21 now, I think, and she's the new music editor at the NME.
Lucky person, that's the dream gig.
Oh yeah, and her story. And for listeners, if you've not heard that, get back and listen, because she's absolutely fabulous. You two should be leading Chris and I in the Gig Stories podcast, because you are absolutely up there as geeks with us. So we welcome you.
Well, I have my spreadsheet. Bear that in mind.
Oh yeah, he has a spreadsheet, Anna.
I've got a spreadsheet.
Gigs you've been to.
Yeah, I went through all of my tickets. Excel, yeah, all of my tickets, and so I've got the names of the band or artist, the date, the city, the venue. But now I can look up things by venue and see who I saw there, and and it was, and that was a lockdown thing. So yeah, alongside the elderflower champagne and the banana bread, there was a spreadsheet for all my gigs.
Listen to how pleased he is that I don't even have to go by the artist. I can go, but I can search gigs by the venue.
Yeah, many of you listening will have to go by the artist, not me. I can go by venue. I can even go by month.
While you sip elderflower champagne.
Yes, with my pinky out, and yeah, I can go by month.
I wish I could get the relevant data to do such a thing, but I just can't. I just don't think I could.
You've got it in a shoebox.
Look at this, right? These are the artifacts, which I'm happy to send you pictures of. But this is how nerdy I was, but also how much this gig meant to me. So the coach invoice thing, the coach how much it cost us, 51 quid, all in. For the trip plus 2 tickets.
That's so expensive.
Oh, it is a price, isn't it? But I think it was the travel as well.
Yeah.
All the little things that the merch stall items, t-shirts and things on a sort of glossy bit of paper.
Oh, I am loving this.
The Guardians, like my mum and dad would have read the paper, and I would have nicked this. So it's Damon. So it's the review of the gig from Monday, the 27th of November, 1995.
He is lush. He is, and
he's a beautiful boy, Damon.
Chris there, that other fellow on this Zoom, he's photographed Damon.
Have you? Is he easy to work with, or is he a diva?
No, Chris got thrown out because he kept licking his face.
No, I tell you, I can't remember if I've mentioned. I think I have mentioned this, but it was at Six Music Festival when it was in Manchester. Well, Salford. It was Victoria Warehouse, and I got. And he was there, and he was performing. But then in the morning, the Saturday morning, he was being interviewed by Stuart McConey and Mary-Ann Hobbs, and the 3 photographers got brought in, and I was the third of the 3. The other 2 were NME photographers, and the second of the first 2 accidentally used a flash and pretty much blinded him, and he stood up and started to walk away, and I had to grab his arm and say, "No, come back." And his so he sat down. His person said, "You've got two clicks." I think it was 2 clicks or 3. I can't remember. I took 5. I did 5 clicks, but 3 of them were him looking in a completely different direction.
He wouldn't look at Chris.
He wouldn't look at me. But I did get 1. I think he would have been lovely had he not just had a flash in the face.
Do you have a favourite venue? Do you have a favourite venue that you've played at over the years? And it can be anywhere. I mean, you've told us you've travelled all over the place.
The Crescent City Brewery, which is a big restaurant in New Orleans.
So you've actually played in New Orleans? Yeah. Have you played there sort of a lot?
I'll tell you what's behind that.
Come on.
I'd taken instruments over. I didn't get, it wasn't a paid gig, but I'd taken instruments over with the hope of getting a blow. And we found a small band playing in this very big restaurant. And I went in, and I had no instruments with me, they were in the hotel. I said, "I'm a sax player from Manchester, any chance of coming out having a blow?" "Yeah, go and get it." I said, "No, I'll bring it in tomorrow." "Yeah, we're here tomorrow night." I'll bring it in tomorrow night. So I did. So I go in and I played Do You Know What It Means to Miss New Orleans, which is a real super tune, and one or two very traditional tunes. And then I started putting my sax away. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, when you get sitters in, I notice like you can't get rid of them because they won't go away. Because our own bands have sitters in it. They won't." So I said, "I'm not good." "Oh no," he said. He put the saxophone back together for me. He said, "Hey, come on," and I played the rest of the night.
So you didn't want to impose,
exactly,
as you knew other people had imposed on your band, right?
And you'd say, right, some Fred Smith comes and plays and says, "Right, thank you very much, Fred." And you think he'd take his bow and go, but no, carry on playing. Clear off.
So did you get that quite a lot when you were playing? Other musicians come up and saying, "Can I
Not so
play?"
much now, but yes, definitely did. Yeah.
And how did you deal with that? I mean, did
you
you
just
ever
have to take pot luck? You didn't know what you were going to get.
And so, did you ever turn down people that you wished afterwards that you?
Well, you just let them play one tune.
Yeah. No, but did you ever say no, you can't, and then find out that we should let him play?
No, oh well, there was one case I was telling you about the when we were playing at the Tommy Ducks in Manchester.
All right, go on.
And the lady came up and said, "I've got a brother in America, or a cousin, some relative in America. She had a post office in Walden, and he's coming over. Could he come and play with your band?" So I didn't know anything about this. I was told this later. It turned out that the band leader thought, we don't know the hell it's going to be. No, he said, "I'm sorry, no, we don't have sitters in. We don't. It's not custom for us." It turned out to be the guitarist was Stan Getz.
Oh my God.
Charlie Bird.
Charlie Bird.
Yeah.
So this is Charlie Bird spelled B-Y-R-D.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie Bird is.
And he's just. I don't think he's with us now. No. But he was a brilliant player.
Oh, wowzers. The one that got away. Oh.
So I bought the NME and devoured it religiously from being 13. I remember the first NME I bought, and it had Ted Nugent on the front, sat on the toilet. and
there's a metaphor.
Yeah, and the NME was my window on the world. You know, before the internet, here's all these, alien people who've got this insight into this other world that's out there, and it was about 98 pages, and it was very inky, and you got it all over your hands and up your clothes, but you got a sense of another world being out there, and Bowie and Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground, and it was quite heavyweight, sort of intellectual, probably pretentious, you would say.
Oh, really?
So you wouldn't understand it. So who is Dostoevsky, and who was William Burroughs, and who were the Situationists, and what is Dadaism? It sent you looking for that stuff.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. So I devoured that right down to the badge adverts at the back.
Yes.
For like 30 years. So I went to see the latest hot band, right through until the early 2000s on the NME's recommendation. So the Strokes, the Libertines, and the White Stripes came through this on the same wave, really.
Yeah, yeah.
And I saw the White Stripes at the Roadhouse. I struggled with the Libertines. It was almost too rammed, and they didn't impress me as much as the Strokes or the White Stripes. But I've come back to them.
Do you know what was interesting? And this is meant to be purely positive. A few years ago, I'm part of Tim Peaks at Kendall Calling, which is a really small venue with Tim Burgess. And we had the Libertines come and play a secret set.
I was there.
Oh, you were there, weren't you?
Because I was angling to do a poem before they went on, and it couldn't make it happen. I was there.
And Pete, I'm absolutely pleased to say, Pete Doherty now is on the mend and is clean. Now, my daughter again, who's here, she's getting a lot of mentions. We had a talk about heroin because of that gig. Pete came, and bless him, he was in a right mess. And it was a really nice chat with my daughter, and we were able to be frank. And do you know what? Friday night, she was like, "Oh, Dad, he is brilliant because he's put on weight. He looks healthy. He was still Pete Doherty,
but he was able to chat, but they still had that slightly raggedy edge, and it was great, wasn't it, Grace? And it was just so nice to see.
I admire
that
his
happen.
lyrics. He came out of the poetry scene. He used to run poetry open mics in Covent Garden, and I know a lot of people who were on that scene with him, and he has poets supporting him. And I met Carl Barat. The last poem in my book's called Sex and Love and Rock and Roll, and a lot of it's about music. The last poem in my book is called The Last Gang in Town, ? And it's a melange. It's made of Clash lyrics and Clash references, saying, will we ever see their like again? Bands that mean it like that.
Yeah.
So when the Clash put their box set out about 10 years ago, they did an audience with live at Maida Vale with Kerry Matthews. So I was invited to do my poem on the show. So I did my Clash poem in front of the Clash, which was a little bit scary.
Yes.
And then that night they released the box set. The box set was done like a ghetto blaster, like a big,
that's
1981 ghetto blaster.
Yeah.
And they had a pop-up shop in Soho, and I wangled my way into that other night, and it was just punk central. I met Glenn Matlock, and Jonathan Ross was there, and Don Letts was there, and what's the supermodel called?
Naomi Campbell.
No.
Kate Moss.
Kate Moss was there.
Pete Doherty's partner for a while.
Yeah. But I met Carl Barat that night, and he was a nice guy.
It was they are sort of, because it's almost like watching a new band for me. So I think they're like in their early 20s, but they're actually my age, 44 and stuff. But I think they are that one band who are really maybe Fontaine's DC as well, that have really got that and Idols really got that punk. They're waving the flag.
The energy of those punk gigs at the Apollo in 78, 79. By the time I was there, they'd been, the Clash had played Bellevue before, but those bands were only 19, 21, and 3 months before they'd been playing at, say, the Factory or the Poly, and they were one top of pop appearance, and they were catapulted onto the Apollo, Apollo stage. And lots of them only had one album; they only had 40 minutes of material. Yeah. And I've known some of them to do the big single twice.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden they found themselves in front of 3,000 14, 15-year-olds. And the energy, I've seen it with the Jam and some of those punk gigs. I've seen it with the Smiths. I've seen it with the Stone Roses. I think the Fontaines are getting there. Yeah. But it's a very rare thing when a band connects, not just with the students, but with the council estates at the same time.
Yeah.
And to be big, you've got to do that.
Yeah.
But the energy of that is quite something.
And so what else do you remember about the crowd that was at that series of gigs, punk gigs?
Violence.
What was it? Yeah, really violent, was it?
There'd be fights, and the bouncers would punch kids and throw you out, and I saw all the seats ripped up once at a Stranglers gig. We used to bung the bouncers to get in. If a ticket was £4, if you waited till the main crowd was in and you paid them, they'd bring you around the side and let you in and run you up the stairs.
How much would you have to pay them?
£4 or £5 when the tickets were £4 or £5. So I saw the Back in Black tour, AC/DC.
Where?
At the Apollo.
At the Apollo?
Yeah. So
that was incredible.
I was a punky kid, but lots of my mates you'd say heavies. And so that seeped across. So Motorhead I was into. There's a bridge there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
But AC/DC I really got into. Bon Scott era, and then he died.
Of course.
But then Back in Black came out, and
what was that gig like?
It was the first rock gig I'd been to, metal gig.
Yeah.
I remember the banks of Marshall stacks, which punks really didn't go in for, and the volume, and they came out with the bell, Yeah. And it's like Brian, Brian Johnson, the new singer. Who's this guy? But it was amazing. It was amazing. The energy, and now I'm going to mention AC/DC a few times. They're astonishing.
Because it frustrates the life out of me. I've still not seen them, and I have tried really hard to see them. Maybe not hard enough, but just not willing to pay that much over the odds because I never get a ticket. But I believe they still hold the record for loudest decibels. Motorhead beat them, and then AC/DC got it back. But I've watched with my son. There's a HD, a high definition footage on YouTube of one of their gigs in River Plate in South America. You've got to watch it. The crowd there is about over 100,000.
Is it?
It is unbelievable. real. It's incredible.
If you haven't seen that AC/DC at River Plate gig, it's literally 150,000 people in the sports stadium, and it isn't 10,000 people at the front.
No,
pogoing. 150,000 people are going mental.
The whole thing, and he looks like the sea. They look like the sea, and I just think.
And the guy walks out. If I was going to talk about this stuff later. If I could have anybody's talent, any moment in rock, Angus Young walks down a catwalk into the middle of a stadium, plays one note. I just shivered then. Holds his hand in the air, and 150,000. That is. The power of that is incredible.
Well, I'm happy to go down an AC/DC wormhole just
Let's
now.
do it.
Go on. So, what are your thoughts?
It's a very basic rock template, isn't it? It's the blues, and Angus Young wasn't the leader of that band. His brother Malcolm was the engine of that band and called the musical shots. And I only saw them on the Back in Black tour. And I parted company with them for some of the Brian Johnson's albums, I have to say. I played the Bon Scott stuff, but I did see them at the Etihad about 3 or 4 years ago with your man from Guns N' Roses, Axl Rose.
Oh, when he replaced
and I have
Brian.
to say it worked. He's got the same screechy voice. Yeah. But Angus is 60 odd, and the miles he puts in, the energy he puts in, and what that man can do with two note riffs, is incredible.
I still hope to see them because I hear that. So Brian Johnson dropped out because of ear problems, and they were, the doctors told him you might go deaf, you might completely lose your hearing.
How did that happen?
I know exactly. I'm surprised it didn't happen earlier, but I believe he's going to be coming back for some gigs. Is that right?
You were going to ask me at the end for a gig recommendation, and I was going to say if you haven't seen them, they've probably only got one more tour in them. And you can see AC/DC if you can, because it's just everything you want in a rock band. The blueprint is there,
Yeah, they are incredible.
Some of the lyrics don't bear a lot of scrutiny by modern standards, but just sheer power.
But not to Noel Gallagher's.
Well, there we are, yeah.
I mean, the story of Squidgy starting again, starting as a live entity in 2006, is kind of. It's interesting the way he did it, which is I'm trying to. How do I tell this story? So it's January 2006, and I heard that he'd done a gig, and I was like a massive Squidgy fan. Like in the mid '80s, I bought Cupid and Psyche as a chubby 13-year-old boy. I just thought they were. Magnificent. And anyway, I heard that he'd done a gig under the name Double G and the Traitorous Three at the Windmill in Brixton, and I was absolutely livid with this friend of mine that they didn't tell me about it. I was like, what do you mean you didn't tell me that Green did a gig? And a few days later I was in a pub in Dalston and he was at the bar, and I went up to him and said I was awfully upset to have missed this gig, and he said, there'll probably be some more, but I need to find a keyboard player because the current one is going away to the USA.
No.
Do you know anyone? And I'm like, yeah, well, I play keys. And he was like, oh, great. Okay, give me your email address. I'll email you tomorrow. And it turns out that he basically hired the whole band from that pub. He was just chatting to people and asking if they fancied playing a few songs. So, it was a local plumber on drums and the barmaid on bass. And the reason I say all this is that it made for a very strong social unit.
Yes.
That made him able to get up there. Because part of his fear was that he would be on stage with a bunch of crack musicians and would just feel inadequate and nervous, even more nervous. Whereas if he went on stage with a bunch of pals, he would find it a lot easier. So yeah, it was it was a strong social unit, but it was a baptism of fire because we were, there were some people learning instruments as they went. You know what I mean? And something like our 12th gig was at this stadium in Tokyo with Daft Punk and the Charlatans, and we were like rabbits in headlights. It was absolutely ridiculous.
What?
Yeah. So
no way.
There's one thing before we get back onto live music again. I just wanted to ask you quickly, and you don't have to answer it. It's absolutely fine. But it's just about. It can't not ask you about working briefly with Phil Spector, and I know it looks like it didn't turn out as planned. But what do you remember about the kind of relationship, the working with Spectre? Was it on the second album?
Yeah. It's obviously difficult to, I guess you have to transport yourself back to that time, because it's difficult to say anything positive about someone who's well, we all know what kind of happened.
No, absolutely.
afterwards.
I mean, I was more interested in the style of his production.
Like I say, if we kind of imagine how people felt before all that came out, then the first few days when we recorded Silence is Easy were amazing, and he sort of implemented his wall of sound and opened up the echo chambers in the studio. I was a big fan of I'm still a big fan of Dion. So people obviously John Lennon, he worked on Imagine and all these incredible, worked with the Beatles as well. But it was Dion that really, that Born to Be With You album, that was why I was excited to work with Phil Spector. But then it sort of went downhill after that, really. It just, I was speaking about it the other day, about how he was very controlling, not so much with us, but he didn't want the label to be involved with the process or to hear any kind of works in progress, which they didn't take too kindly to, because they were paying for the record, and they're like, Phil Spector was like, you'll hear it when it's finished, kind of thing. So that created a tension between those two parties, and they were sort of caught in the middle.
I was going to say, that's you don't want to be caught in there.
He insisted on working odd hours as well. He came over from LA and kept LA time, so we were starting late and finishing in the early hours of the morning. And I just had my daughter at the time, so I was going home to a baby as well. It was quite a tense time. Yeah.
Did you genuinely feel that he brought something new to your sound?
Yeah, I think the sound of Silence is Easy, particularly that track, is still holds up. But there isn't anything that he did that we've sort of carried forward. What he does is so unique, or was so unique, so it's impossible to kind of take any sort of advice or any aspects of his sound and carry it forward.
That's him.
Well, thanks for that, because I think I would have kicked myself if I'd not asked you.
See, told you it was a plethora.
Absolute plethora our head off there, right? Didn't we?
We really are lucky. We have had some just amazing guests, and we have got some more absolutely belting guests lined up.
Just the conversations I've been having with PRs and people themselves, and people who I sent emails to and didn't expect even a response, and they've gone, well, yeah, all right, but a bit busy just now, but how about November? And we've got some absolute crackers coming up. I cannot wait to get my teeth into this.
My mum, your sister, our neighbour's dog.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's going to be good. So we want you to get on board. So we are still on our social media pages, and we'll be giving you all a nudge. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our handle is
at Gig Stories Pod, and our website is gigstoriespodcast.com, or is it the gigstoriespodcast.com? Try them both. God, we are rusty. But on our website, gigstoriespodcast.com, you can find all of our episodes, and you can find a page dedicated to each of our guests, which have a playlist for each episode, and also loads of videos and some photos. And there's also a page of galleries featuring gigs that we've talked about on some of our episodes. So yeah, go there, get in contact, info@gigstoriespodcast.com, and yeah, just get in touch. And let us know if you are going to be speaking to a pal of yours and taking them to a gig which it can take them out of their comfort zone, or maybe it just hits them sideways and it's something that they would never have gone to, and you might introduce them to a new genre of music, let alone a new band.
Whether it's Stormzy at your local arena or Curtis Stigers at your local jazz bar, whatever it might be. I don't know why I chose them, but it just came to mind. Now, what I'd also like to do in our future episodes is when you hear the lovely dulcet tones of Chris and I, we are going to ask each other a question that we will try and quickly answer, but that will be for you as well, listener, because I think we realized we ask so many questions in these podcasts and then we ask you to answer them. It's all a bit vague. So we want you involved, as we say. We want you to be part of our podcast community, and we're not reinventing the wheel here, but we know that many of you, like Mr. and Mr. Geek here, just love chatting about music in general. And so we will ask a pointed question. And so I'm going to surprise Chris right now before we finish this episode by saying, Chris, today you can have one artist in your front room and they're doing a 30-minute set. It's just them though. So there's no backing band. It's just them. Who's it going to be? Mine, Jeff Buckley.
Oh,
Yours?
You can do it like that. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to have Jeff Buckley play, and I'm going to dictate the set to him, and he will finish with Last Goodbye.
Okay. I would have Randy Newman.
And oh my gosh, I did not expect that one.
And he would finish with Short People.
Why are you looking at me? Are you from? This is twice. This is twice in one show. Unbelievable.
It was like the end of The Usual Suspects, where I was looking around the walls and seeing what I could see, and then I just saw you and thought, Randy Newman, Short People. Honestly,
what time
I love
it.
Oh, Randy Newman is just he's just a genius. But Short People is one of the funniest. I just love it. I love that song. But yeah, I'd have Randy Newman on the piano.
He's covering his mouth with his hand, which is all the signs of he just can't stop laughing.
It's a professional footballer on the pitch. That's what I'm doing.
That is a great shout. That is a great shout. And you know what I like about that question as well is if you ask me or I ask you that question next week, I'll probably say something different.
Oh yeah.
It's a good one. So, listeners, right now, as you're listening to this, later on today, you've got a guest in your living room doing a half-hour set, no backing band, so it's acoustic or just them and an amp. Who's it going to be?
Singing Acapulco. I mean, a cappella. Yeah.
Going loco down in Acapulco.
And on that note...
Aren't you glad we're back, eh?
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time very, very soon with our next guest.
Yes. Woohoo!